There it is.
Hey, welcome. Looking at your guest behind you, Lisa.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Virgin Authors Show. We are three friends who are bonded by our love of writing, struggling to navigate the publishing world. I'm Mandy McGuire.
Hey guys, I'm Jana Vandelar.
And I'm Lissa Reese, and I am delighted to introduce tonight's guest. Brooke Warner started her publishing career almost 25 years ago. In 2012, she left the world of traditional publishing to co-found the groundbreaking hybrid publishing house, She Writes Press, which is a mission-driven, female-run alternative to both traditional and self-publishing options. Brooke is also a coach and a consultant to novelists, memoirists, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders working on big idea nonfiction projects. I first met Brooke last year at a writing conference on Kauai, and then had the opportunity to take classes from her at a conference in Santa Fe. Brooke encouraged the Virgin authors, and we invited her to chat with us about her hybrid publishing house and how one gets a project green-lighted. Thank you, Brooke, for being here tonight.
Well, thanks, Lissa. Thanks, everyone. Really happy to be with all of you.
Yeah, we're excited. Let's just jump right in. What is She Writes Press? With all the different types of publishing options like self-publishing, hybrid, traditional, can you explain your company, how your company operates? Then it makes it different and stand out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are solidly hybrid. I think we're among the earliest of the hybrid publishing companies. And so we exist in a space between between self-publishing and traditional publishing. And so for people who have never heard of hybrid, I like to think of it as the best of both worlds. And I really think that it is. You know, traditional publishing has challenges for authors because the barriers to entry are really, really high, and sometimes not for good reasons. You know, sometimes your writing can be fantastic, but you don't have enough followers, or you don't have a big enough author platform, or you're not famous enough. And so that's the kind of struggles that we see a lot with our authors who want to break into traditional publishing, but they're experiencing all of these complications and barriers that are sort of arbitrary and difficult to navigate. And then on the self-publishing side, there are people doing great self-publishing and people doing terrible self-publishing. And I think the problem is that there's such a wide range. And for people who really want to learn the business, self-publishing can be a cool option. But a lot of people are just kind of throwing themselves into self-publishing, and then they're finding that they don't have important things, you know, like quality control, or someone who knows the industry to help them, or importantly, distribution. Like, we have distribution into the marketplace. And so why we're hybrid is it's a model in which authors invest, you know, a certain amount of money in a publishing endeavor, like a publishing package is what we call it. But it's not self-publishing because the authors get a very high percentage of royalties. We are a publishing house. We have traditional distribution, which is very important. And then also, I would say another big aspect of what we do is that we vet the submissions. So we don't accept everything. And so there's a high editorial and production and design standard. And so in that way, we're occupying this space where we're really giving authors a platform and a springboard to get their work out in a really meaningful way.
Very cool. So you touched on multiple topics that we're going to go into more details. So that was just like a perfect segue. You didn't even know you were doing that.
Great.
So
No, I even have more questions after that, but go
yes,
ahead.
we already have those. So can you go a little bit further? Like, what does the process look like? How does a book come to be published? How's that selection process? How long does it take? And really just, you know, kind of walk through what an author would expect in your process.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are usually acquiring more than a year and a half out. And the reason for that is because of our distributor. So currently we have Publishers Group West, which is a West Coast distributor, and they're fantastic. But starting in August, we're actually moving over to Simon & Schuster, which is an exciting announcement that we were able to make last month. Yeah, thank you. So, when you have traditional distribution, what that means is that you have access to the trade, and the trade just means retail. It means wholesalers. So our books are available in every place from brick and mortar stores to a wholesale account like Baker and Taylor that sells to libraries, to specialty accounts like REI or Anthropology. And so that's what it means to be distributed into the trade. So for us, that's the reason for the timeline being so long. These are what we call long lead. So you're acquiring your books, like a good 1.5 to 2 years out. The reason being that you're prepping for all of the stuff that your sales force needs to sell your books
So,
into the
yeah,
trade.
what happens during that 1.5 years?
Yeah, good question. A lot of nothing. A lot of it is just that's how long publishers need to sort of get the materials to make the covers. And so if like we have a big list, maybe 50 authors, and so we have to get all our ducks in a row for a whole list. If you were only a single author publishing one book, that's why self-publishing is appealing to a lot of people, because you could get published in a matter of 3 months. But when you have a whole list that you're working to publish and you have to get everything ready for your distributor to then sell, right? So our sales force sells our entire list a full 6 to 8 months in advance of the pub date.
So
Oh,
you release blocks of books.
That's right. Yeah, and that's a good way of thinking about it. Exactly. So we have pub dates that are always on Tuesdays, and we release usually about 4 to 5 books every Tuesday. And so those books you're backing into a schedule. And so I think authors sometimes wonder, like, why the hell am I, submitting to a publisher now to be published in 2 years? But the reason is because there's so much internal stuff that needs to happen, and our books need to be completely done, as I said, 6 to 8 months prior to the pub date. And so that means you have an advanced reader copy, you have a finished book that is ready to show to, publicity opportunities, for instance. So that's sort of the timeline situation. And a lot of people are wondering, why, if I submit to you now, can I not get published until 2025? And that's the reason, is really because of our sales force and our distribution team.
Okay, so I just want to say I had the privilege of meeting a whole bunch of your authors at various different conferences. And so the kinds of people who are attracted to the hybrid publishing are everything from memoirists that you've met. You've got anthologies that you do. You've got more memoirs from completely different kinds of people, and novels as well. So apparently it just appeals all across the board for
I think
different.
we appeal to very sophisticated writers, honestly, because one of the things is that we have a really strong reputation in the marketplace, and we get our books meaningfully into, as I mentioned before, brick and mortar stores, into libraries, into wholesale markets. And so people who want to have a true opportunity to have their books out in the channels, in the sales channels in a meaningful way, are looking for serious partnerships. And so what we do, in addition to creating beautiful books, our covers are gorgeous, our designs are pretty, we want to have good looking books and editorially sound books, but then there's the access. And so the access is really the important part to me in terms of an author's success. And it's why self-publishing becomes problematic for people, is because you can, of course, publish a very nice looking book and it could be editorially beautifully written, but it's only available on online channels. And so this push into the marketplace, which for us, for our authors, gives them a real opportunity to be in the same sandbox as their traditional counterparts, and then to have meaningful sales. And that's always been the push from the beginning, is around saying, like, look, these are authors who have written gorgeous and important books, but the traditional publishing industry can't accommodate everyone right now. And it's not because the books aren't good, it's because of all of these sort of complicated reasons that exist in traditional publishing, from consolidation to not taking risks to, just the very fact that they want people who have a certain level of following on social media or whatever.
So this distribution agreement with Simon and Schuster must be a tremendous validation for the work that you've been doing. And I'm going to quote you from Instagram, where you said that your entire motivation as a publisher is to open more opportunities and level the playing field for your authors. So, I mean, to me, it sounds like you've kind of reached the top rung here.
Yeah,
So,
that was the analogy that I was using when we got the offer from Simon and Schuster. I was like, all right, that's the top of the ladder. I mean, there's nowhere for us to go from here on distribution. You know, we can continue to produce, you know, better, best, you know, amazing books, but we already have fabulous books. So for us, it's really just a matter of staying the course. And I think we have, over these 12 years, really changed the face of book publishing, because when I started, there was no hybrid. I mean, there was co-publishing, and of course there were different publishing models, but I think that our work has really legitimized hybrid, and that has been really, really important to me. So for us, Simon and Schuster is that final frontier in some ways.
Yeah, it's amazing. Seriously, I congrats and kudos.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know how you pulled it off, girl. But can I guess, you know, we're virgin authors, and so to start with, like if I'm brand new, finished a book, and so do we submit it to you like we would as an agent, or but we're not going to have to go through an agent, correct? We
Right.
have it's directly through you guys, and then you say no, we're not interested, or and there's parameters on your website probably to show that.
Yeah, I mean, we have like probably in some ways an overcomplicated submissions process, but it feels important to us because you do submit through the site and it's through Submittable. It's meant to be user friendly, but it's a two-tiered process. So the first round, we have like really trusted readers. Actually, several of them are agents and they're editors. So either editors and agents who I know and have worked with for a long time do that first pass. And then they assign it and say either, yes, we think it's ready to go have a second look, or no, it's not ready, and we are going to tell you why. And so that's the first pass. And so for those who get the green light, you know, to see the next round, those come to us internally, and then we have a team of 4 internal editors, and all of us read the projects. And so it's got this kind of exterior, you know, outside readers and then internal readers. And so that's, I think, incredibly important to us because we're really deciding, we're vetting kind of on 2 different levels. And then we don't have, you know, a super high submissions pass through, and it's getting ever more rigorous, you know. So because we get a lot of submissions, I would say anywhere from like 10 to 15% of the projects that are submitted to us get accepted flat out. But we also offer things like, we really like the project, but it needs a developmental edit. We really like this concept, but it's not ready for prime time. So if you want to consider coaching, and sometimes authors will say that's too much work and we don't want to. And sometimes authors say, yes, we'd love the opportunity. And then they can come back and submit again without going through the formal submissions process. So we try to cultivate, you know, kind of trust, I guess, with authors saying like, we're really being serious about what we're looking for, and we're not going to publish something that's not ready for prime time, because that also doesn't help anyone. You know, it doesn't help us sell your book, and it doesn't help our other authors, you know, to have books on the list that are not ready.
Do you have the development editors on staff, or and then the person like me would pay a separate cost for that first, and then
Right.
hopefully that would clean it up enough, or is that the process?
Yeah, they're not on staff. It's basically a stable of contractors and freelancers that I've cultivated, you know, over the course of my entire publishing career, basically. But yes, they are, sometimes I'll assign them. Sometimes it's more, you know, an introduction. I always feel that authors should, aspiring authors, writers, they need to have a synergy. You know, I think it's appropriate when you hire a coach to meet them and be like, you know, do we like each other? Do we have a good vibe? So
Okay.
it's not just like, oh, you're assigned to this person. It's a little bit more of a matchmaking kind of scenario than that. And we have copy editors, we have proofreaders. I mean, it's quite an operation, and we do try to designate as best
Yeah.
we can, what projects need what level of editorial work.
Yeah, no, that's a huge help for newbies, to have
Yeah.
even access at all like that you could recommend. So that's really nice, I think.
Yeah, I
So
think
you
authors
meant,
appreciate it.
yeah, you mentioned earlier that authors invest. So can you talk a little bit about the cost, even just generically, because I know you have different packages and different options. But the cost, honestly, it feels really significant to me. It sounds like a very large cost. Can you talk just about like average cost or in generic terms, but then what does the author, what is provided to them in your package?
Yeah, absolutely. There actually is only one package and it's 9,500. So it's not an insignificant cost for sure. And for some people, I realize that feels insurmountable. The way that I think about it, of course, is like that you have to, you can't spend the money if it feels like you're going to be sacrificing something very important in your life, in order to take this publishing path. And that is, I would
Yeah.
never recommend, like when I talk to someone and they're very stressed about money, I'll simply say, like, if you have to earn out your expenses, for instance, you need to be really, really careful. We can't ever guarantee that an author is going to earn out what they invest. But it's also important to remember that you are selling something on the other side and you are recouping your investment along the way. It's not like you're just giving over, 10 grand and then being like, okay, and now we're done. Once the sales start, the authors get royalty checks, and those royalty checks are often very significant. And a high percentage of our authors, well, I shouldn't say high. I've been thinking about this lately. I think it's probably like in the 50 to 60% range of authors who earn back their investment over a 3-year period. And
Okay.
so, you're selling books, like it's not just the first month or the second month, right? I mean, book
Right.
sales go on and on and on. And then it's also truly important, I think, to think about what other doors publishing opens for you. Because for
Right.
some people it means speaking gigs. There's also multiple ways of selling books. There's print, there's ebooks, there's audiobooks. And so there's lots of streams of income. And I think authors do need to have a more entrepreneurial mindset when they're coming into
Yeah.
something like this, and not just thinking of it as like this passive thing that you're like, here's this doorstop that's never going to like actually make money for you, because it does. And the more the authors put into it, the more money they make. So in that sense, there's incentive and, real ways to recoup your investment. That said, I guess the other piece is that, we're not just saying, okay, here, give us 9,500 up front. It's like it's spread out. And so because of this long lead, there's 2 payments. And so it's kind of like you make one payment one year and one payment the next year, which I think is helpful.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. And then in terms of what authors get, I mean, it's also potentially a lifelong arrangement. I mean, granted, we've been in business for almost 13 years now, but a lot of the authors who published 13, 12, 11 years ago, their books are still in print with us. And they're not selling a ton, but they're still selling, and we're still project managing those books, and we're still helping them with, if they have a sale or something like that they want to do. And so it's the job of producing the book, which is important, but then there's a longer relationship and investment in the project than just like, okay, now we're done. We are their publisher of record for the lifetime of the book.
And do you solicit additional books from them if a book does well?
We really don't. And that's just part of the business model. I mean, I think we have a lot of return authors, and I think that speaks well to what we're doing, because authors want to come back. But part of it is, I guess, the luxury of just having a lot of submissions, that we're not actively soliciting return authors, because we already have a lot of return authors, and we have to have enough room on the list, of course, to publish new authors. And so if an author, I mean, when and if an author wants to return, we always want that, but we still have to vet the submission as if it's a new project. It's not just a guarantee.
Right.
So like, for instance, a return author came to us recently and had a second novel, and it was good, but it needed a fair amount of work, and I said to her, like, we're just treating you like every other author. You're not getting special treatment. And so she went through a really rigorous developmental edit. And she is going to publish her second novel with us. And I think everyone felt good about that process.
So I feel like you have given us a really firm, solid, clear picture of what we can expect if we were to go through this kind of a process, because so many of us put so much effort into trying to get the agent, and you've eliminated the need for all that. So I guess if you have the money and the will to go through this kind of a process, it's a really good option.
I mean,
And,
I think
I wasn't really sure about that coming into this interview, so I appreciate your honest answers.
well, thank you. I think the thing is that agents obviously are a gatekeeper to the larger traditional publishing world. And I have just seen a lot of authors, especially virgin authors, new authors with grand aspirations, and high hopes. And I really get it. But right now, if you're a debut author with a first book and you don't have a giant author platform, you can have the best book in the world and people are still going to be like, I'm not sure I can take a chance on this person. And people have to keep in mind too that agents only make money if you make money. And so most agents I know don't want to sell anything, or they don't want to take on anything that they don't think they can sell for at least $100,000, because they only make 15%. And so that's 15,000 when you get 100,000, right? In terms of the effort that they're putting in. And so it's a really hard world out there. Like I always try to remind authors of this, like this effort that you're putting in, and it's good, and you should try, absolutely, for people who have their aspirations bound in traditional publishing, but you should not try forever. Like you shouldn't try to the detriment of your next book. I know people who have been shopping and working and toiling at it for like 6-8 years. And I'm like, in that time, you could have written 3 books, and instead you've been like spinning circles waiting for someone to say yes to you. And I can't buy into that anymore, because the traditional publishing world is just not all there is.
Okay, we are running short of time and I want to get to know you a little bit better. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your podcast, Right-Minded Weekly Inspiration for Writers, that you do with Grant Faulkner. Now, for those of you who don't know, Grant Faulkner is the executive director of National Novel Writing Month. And a lot of our listeners have gone through NaNoWriMo multiple times. And I know you did an episode last month where you were providing support to writers in NaNoWriMo. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about what else you guys do on that podcast.
That podcast is just 100% about inspiration. It's like whatever Grant and I find, people pitch us. We try, of course, to get authors on the show that we know and love, but every single episode has a theme. And so we do everything from, like more craft oriented to just super inspiration stuff. So it's been going for over 5 years, and, you can look at the archives, but there's just like, we bring on YA authors and genre writers and memoirists and fiction writers. We've done historical fiction, we've done every kind of genre, and also just any kind of stuff, publishing industry related. And so it's kind of whatever strikes us in terms of what we're intending. But the tagline is, like weekly inspiration for writers. And that's what we try to do.
I am so in awe of your commitment to doing this every week. It's unbelievable. I mean, we do this once or twice a month, and that's kind of enough for us.
So I wanted to just ask one last question. They go pretty quick. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed your 2017 TED Talk about Greenlighters. And if you can tell us a little bit about what a Greenlighter is, which, we kind of understand from your conversation, but if you could specify that. And then also it kind of closes our conversation on publishing. If in that TED Talk, you commented about acquiring editors and the concept of fame over talent. And you hinted at that today as well. Do you think the industry has changed in the last 6 years in that area of the fame over talent? Because it seems to have multiplied in my view, and maybe I'm just paying attention to it, but would you mind addressing both of those before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. So the greenlighting idea is sort of what I ended the last question on, this idea that like if you are waiting around for someone to say yes to you, there's a certain window in which I think that that's okay, because of course everybody has to go out and there's a lot of validation wrapped up in someone saying yes to you, and getting the deal and getting the agent to say yes and getting the book deal. All of that stuff is wonderful and feels good, and it is the right path for some authors. But for other authors who are, again, kind of spinning their wheels or getting the rejections or feeling like, I know I have a great project and the traditional publishing is saying no to me, and it's because of my lack of author platform, or they're saying euphemisms like, we don't know if we can sell this, we don't know what to do with this, or we have already published a book that's similar to this book in the last couple of years, blah, 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 blah. Then you need to greenlight yourself. That's the message. It's like there is a whole other world out there while you're sitting around, like waiting and tying yourself into knots. And, I say like waiting to be ordained or, anointed, right, by the powers that be. And it's hard because I see a lot of authors doing that, and I just know that there's other paths, and it's not just hybrid. It might be self-publishing, it might be just another path forward, and that may open you up to the possibility of a future traditional publishing deal if you still are invested in that down the road. But you need a book to build an author platform. That is just a reality. And so you get a book and then you build a platform and then you just have more possibility. So that's a lot of what greenlighting is about, is just not waiting for someone else to tell you that your book is good enough. And then in terms of the celebritization of book publishing, yes, Mandy, it has gotten worse. And it just gets worse every year. It's been something that's been on my radar it's the reason I left traditional publishing. And that was 13 years ago. And it just irked me. I tell the story in there about, the makeup book in my TED Talk about the makeup book. And like one thing I don't think I say in the TED Talk is that she had an endorsement by Ralph Lauren and a party, Ralph Lauren was going to throw her a party. And that was a big part of the reason we acquired the book, was just her to Ralph Lauren. And that kind of stuff is all over the place, like, oh, I know this person and they're going to endorse my book and they're going to throw me a party and blah, 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 blah. And I just like, it's just not my vibe. I just really, and I loved where I was at Seal Press because it was this feminist press and it didn't really ascribe to that kind of stuff. And then it did. And you can't escape it. You can't escape it in traditional book publishing. And of course, like celebrity books sell, but it also dilutes the marketplace. So it is a reality.
But I'm not. Brooke has got this incredible book that's called Greenlight Your Book. I could not find. I'm in the process of moving here, but excellent. And so any of you guys, it's just what you're saying. And I think it's really good for us. You also have Right On Sisters, which I love. So Brooke is published herself, and you guys can follow that. And we're already out of time. Can you believe how fast this goes? It's insane. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Everybody should pick up this book, because greenlighting it's like take it into your hands and try it with this, with She Writes Press, or try self-publishing, which I did with a children's book. And it's tough, it's a tough thing, but at least you take it on, instead of having it sit there. The window, like you said, it's like, come on. But thank you so much. You had so much information. I was taking notes. I'm like, I can watch this later. So I'll just.
Oh, thank you all so much for having me and for the service that you offer people. It's fabulous.
Well, we love virgin authors. Go ahead, Liz.
No, Lisa, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted. That's why I kept thinking I was blocking you. And I'm like, wait.
She's saying very important things. Silent.
Very important.
I was barking. I'm so sorry. Yes. Well, thank you for being here. And thank you, those of you who've tuned in to this special edition of Virgin Authors Live. We will be back in 2 days. We're doing 2 episodes in 1 week. It's our regular third Thursday in December, and we will have J.J. Elliott, author of the fabulous novel, There Are No Rules for This. Please join us.
She Writes author. Bring it on, ladies.
Yes, yes. And you can watch the Virgin Authors live here on Facebook. You can find our episodes on our website, on our YouTube channel. virginauthors.com. Please also follow the links of our individual Virgin authors and reach out to us at any time. Have a great night, everyone.
Yeah, and
Bye.
thanks, Brooke.
Bye.
Thanks so much, you guys. All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Oh, it's gone. Is she
We are
gone?
still live.